Welcome to Scrutinize My System. For this episode, we'll be diving into the background of MS-DOS and PC-DOS version 3 and comparing the small changes they made since version 2. MS-DOS was beginning to fall apart, not for popularity reasons, but rather compatibility reasons. Networking was becoming a requirement in the digital industry, but Microsoft's drivers would prove to be all but adequate for every single computer on the market with MS-DOS. Paul Allen, one of the co-founders of Microsoft, would step down for health reasons. He kept his shares in the company, but would gradually become less involved in the company, including leaving the MS-DOS team. Why was MS-DOS still successful? They were cheap. Even for the IBM line of computers, there were alternative operating systems available for the machines. PC-DOS happened to be the cheapest option, however, and as such would become the most popular for their line of computers. Around this time, Apple had just released two all-in-one machines called the Lisa and the Macintosh within a year of each other. They were the first commercially available machines with a graphical user interface, giving the general public the first taste of a point-and-click control using icons instead of the traditional command line interface. Microsoft would initially take great interest in the system, not to clone it, but rather to develop software for it. Bill Gates himself was friends with one of the Apple executives and co-founder, Steve Jobs. Though working for different companies, the two often had business agreements for their respective companies to boost each other's products, both with dreams of changing the world for the better. Microsoft would develop software for both the Macintosh and the Apple II, which helped give these machines a bigger variety of software, and ultimately making them more appealing to customers. Apple even granted Microsoft the use of a prototype Macintosh to develop the software with. At this point, Microsoft was not a direct competitor to Apple, but instead a valued business partner. Eventually, Microsoft would be inspired to create two new projects. One of the projects would be a collaboration with IBM to create an entirely new operating system. The other is a shell to act as an extension to the existing MS-DOS operating system. So I'm going to be blunt with you guys. The difference between MS-DOS 2 and MS-DOS 3 primarily is drivers. But the second difference is MS-DOS 3.2 specifically is the first MS-DOS version to be available for retail. So allegedly that would be the little bit more stripped down version of MS-DOS. It would be just right off the shelf ready to go with pretty much any computer. And let's go ahead and boot up the MS-DOS 3.21 as I'm talking about this. But the biggest thing with Microsoft is they knew everybody's going to be using this computer on essentially an IBM clone. So everybody has very similar hardware to each other. So all the drivers in MS-DOS is essentially going to be a one-size-fits-all from what they're trying to program. Obviously, it failed, but they attempt to do that for years to come, trying to establish a standard. And eventually they succeed, but at this point in time with MS-DOS 3.21, it doesn't exactly work out for them. So let's go ahead and demonstrate this operating system. Now that for here, I have two disks plugged into this thing. I have drive A, which is your primary drive, and I'll show you what's on that directory. Not a whole lot, which is good because this is the retail version of it, and you don't see any other brands on there. You see Microsoft MS-DOS version 3.21, so this is not an OEM version. This is out of the box retail. So with that said, you see both drive A is the disk 1 and drive B is disk 2. And I did that so I can show everything that's on this thing, but not a whole lot. And for this specific version, this is on the 5 1/4 floppy disk. So let's keep that in mind because the 5 1/4 floppy disks have different amount of storage than the 3 1/2s. Let's test the directory, and I'll show you that it behaves almost exactly the same as MS-DOS 2. So let's go ahead. Let's make a directory that says test. Okay, so I was in the secondary disk. Okay, so we're in drive B. So let's go ahead. Now you notice that after I'm in the folder test, there's still no directory in the command line. We're not going to see that until later. So nothing in the directory, but by typing in dir, we can tell that we're in the test folder. So let's get out of that, and now it's gone. So it's literally the exact same as MS-DOS 2, just the difference is, 1, you have a retail version, and 2, you got the drivers. With that said, let's go ahead and boot up PC-DOS 3.2. Let's go ahead and shut that down. We'll give PC-DOS a few seconds to load. And it's literally the exact same thing, just rebranded for IBM. And you got Microsoft Corp's name on there. You got copyright International Business Machines Corp, 1981-1986. So at this point, this is a joint. I don't even know if you would call it a collaboration, but Microsoft licenses MS-DOS to IBM. IBM tweaks it to whatever they want. Now, later on, they're going to take PC-DOS and they're going to do a lot of major tweaking to the point that it's not going to be recognizable at all, to truth be told. But IBM and Microsoft are going to have a collaboration to make an entirely new operating system with this kind of the core. I don't know if I would consider this to be the grandfather of the next operating system, which is going to be OS2. We'll talk about that in another episode. But ultimately, this is exactly the same as MS-DOS. So in a way, you can think of it as the grandfather of pretty much Windows and OS2 and pretty much everything that's going to be springing out of this later on. But this is it. I'm going to cut this episode short because I don't really want to go through all the different variations of DOS version 3 because there's a lot of them. There's a lot of bloatware. There's a lot of OEMs. Everybody's got their own tweak to it. So I'm just going to end the episode right here. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe. I got more videos on the way. Things are going to get a little bit more complicated from here because we've got 3 branches coming from MS-DOS 3. We've got the DOS shell Windows. We've got OS2, which also splits into more. You got a second strand of OS2, and then you got Windows NT, and then you've got MS-DOS and PC-DOS, which will eventually split as well. So please subscribe, bear with us. We'll explain everything as we go per episode, and thanks for watching.